On July 23, 2011, a 27-year-old woman was found unresponsive in her bed at her home in Camden, North London. Empty vodka bottles were scattered nearby. She had no pulse. Paramedics arrived but there was nothing to be done. Amy Jade Winehouse, one of the most gifted vocalists of her generation, was gone. The world reacted with grief, but also, shamefully, with something close to inevitability. She had been struggling publicly for years. The tabloids had documented every stumble, every erratic performance, every haunted photograph. Many people had seen this coming. But seeing something coming and understanding it are very different things. Amy Winehouse was not a cautionary tale waiting to happen. She was a human being of extraordinary talent, profound sensitivity, and deep pain. A woman failed by the people around her, exploited by an industry that loved her voice more than her life, and ultimately destroyed by addiction that went undertreated for far too long. Somewhere beneath the headlines, beneath the spectacle, beneath everything the world projected onto her, there was just a girl who wanted to sing. Amy Jade Winehouse was born on September 14, 1983, in Southgate, North London, to Mitch and Janice Winehouse. She grew up in a Jewish household in a middle-class neighborhood, the second of two children. From the beginning, Amy was electric. She was funny, irreverent, sharp-tongued, and magnetic. Family members described a child who performed constantly, who was always on, who filled every room with her presence. Music was everywhere in the Winehouse household. Her father Mitch was a taxi driver who loved jazz and would sing Frank Sinatra songs around the house. Her grandmother Cynthia, known as CYN, was a jazz singer herself. Her paternal grandmother Golda had dated the legendary saxophonist Ronnie Scott. Jazz was not just background music for Amy. It was a language she absorbed from infancy. Her parents divorced when Amy was 9 years old. Mitch left the family home, and Amy was primarily raised by her mother Janice. The divorce hit Amy hard. She was deeply attached to her father, and his absence left a wound that never fully healed. Mitch has been both praised and criticized for his role in Amy's life. He remained involved, perhaps too involved at times, and their relationship was complicated. Amy adored him and resented him simultaneously. She later said the divorce shaped everything about how she understood love, loss, and abandonment. At school, Amy was bright but restless. She struggled with authority, got bored easily, and was frequently in trouble. At 13, she enrolled in the Sylvia Young Theatre School on a scholarship, one of the most prestigious performing arts schools in Britain. But even there, she was too much. Too loud, too unpredictable, too unwilling to conform. She was eventually asked to leave, partly for behavioral issues and partly, reportedly, for piercing her nose without permission. She didn't need Sylvia Young. She was already becoming herself. By her mid-teens, Amy was playing guitar, writing songs, and developing the voice that would eventually stop the world. She listened obsessively to Sarah Vaughan, Dinah Washington, Thelonious Monk, and Tony Bennett alongside contemporary artists like TLC, Salt-N-Pepa, and Lauryn Hill. The fusion of jazz phrasing with rhythm and blues sensibility that would define her style was already forming. At 16, her friend Tyler James sent a demo of Amy's vocals to a music industry contact. The reaction was immediate. People who heard that demo couldn't believe a teenage girl from North London sounded like that. The voice was impossibly mature, unmistakably original. She signed with Simon Fuller's 19 Management at 18 and began working on material that would become her debut album. In 2003, Amy Winehouse released Frank. She was 19 years old. Frank was named partly as a nod to Frank Sinatra and partly as a statement of intent. The album was brutally honest about relationships, desire, jealousy, ambition, and heartbreak. It was jazzy, witty, sometimes funny, sometimes devastating. It was unlike anything else being made in British music at the time. Critics adored it. The album was nominated for the Mercury Prize and won 2 Ivor Novello Awards for songwriting. Amy performed on television, did interviews, and built a following. She was funny and direct, saying exactly what she thought, refusing to perform the grateful young artist routine the industry expected. But she was also struggling. Behind the confident public persona was a young woman battling anxiety, depression, and disordered eating. She had been dealing with bulimia since her early teens, a condition she would later discuss publicly with characteristic bluntness. She was drinking heavily. Not yet catastrophically, but noticeably. Those around her were aware of it, but in an industry where heavy drinking is normalized, it was not treated as a crisis. Then she met Blake Fielder Civil. Blake was a video production assistant Amy met at a pub in Camden in 2005. He was charming, charismatic, and troubled. The attraction was instant and explosive. Friends described their relationship as consuming from the beginning, the kind of love that feels like oxygen and poison simultaneously. Blake introduced Amy to heroin. This is documented and was later confirmed by both of them. Whatever their relationship contained, this is its darkest chapter. Amy had been struggling with alcohol before Blake. But heroin accelerated everything. When Blake left Amy for another woman in 2005, she was devastated. The breakup, combined with the pressure of recording her second album and her deepening substance abuse, sent her into a period of profound darkness. She channeled everything into the music. In 2006, Amy released Back to Black. There is no gentle way to say this. Back to Black is one of the greatest albums ever recorded. Not greatest pop albums, not greatest British albums. One of the greatest albums, full stop. It was produced by Mark Ronson and Salaam Remi. It was rooted in the sound of the 1960s girl groups Amy loved, the Ronettes, the Shangri-Las, combined with her jazz phrasing and a lyrical honesty that was almost unbearable in its rawness. Every song was a wound made audible. Rehab, the lead single, was written about her father's suggestion that she go to treatment, which she initially refused. You Know I'm No Good was about her own self-destructive patterns. Back to Black was about Blake leaving her. Love is a Losing Game was perhaps the most devastating ballad written in the 21st century. The album made her a global star almost overnight. She won 5 Grammy Awards in 2008, the most won by a British artist in a single night at that time. She won Best New Artist, Record of the Year, Song of the Year, Best Female Pop Vocal Performance, and Best Pop Vocal Album. The world was at her feet. But the world was also watching her fall apart. Blake came back into her life after Back to Black was recorded but before it was released. They rekindled their relationship with the same intensity as before. They married in Miami in May 2007, a rushed ceremony that shocked friends and family. The marriage was turbulent, fueled by mutual addiction and codependency. They were photographed barefoot in the streets of London at all hours, covered in cuts and bruises, clearly in crisis. The tabloids went into a frenzy. In 2007, Amy entered a period of very public deterioration. Concerts were cancelled. Others were disasters, Amy appearing on stage visibly intoxicated, forgetting lyrics, barely able to stand. Videos of her worst moments went viral. And here is where the story becomes not just tragic but genuinely enraging. The tabloids covered Amy Winehouse with a combination of fascination and cruelty that is almost impossible to overstate. The Sun, the Daily Mirror, and countless gossip blogs published daily updates on her condition. Paparazzi followed her everywhere. Photographers positioned themselves outside her Camden home, waiting for her to emerge in whatever state she was in. They sold millions of papers and generated millions of clicks. Amy Winehouse in crisis was enormously profitable. At no point did the coverage treat her as a sick person who needed help. She was entertainment. She was a spectacle. The framing was always mocking, gleeful, slightly contemptuous. Look at what she has done now. Can you believe it? Isn't it awful? It was awful. But not in the way they meant. Amy was a young woman in her mid-twenties with severe addiction disorders, an eating disorder, depression, and anxiety, living under a microscope, her worst moments photographed and broadcast globally. The tabloid coverage did not just observe her suffering. It contributed to it. Being chased by photographers, reading about yourself described as a train wreck, having strangers photograph you at your lowest, none of this helps recovery. All of it makes it harder. In July 2007, Blake was arrested on charges related to perverting the course of justice, connected to an assault case. He was jailed pending trial. Amy was separated from the person she had built her world around, however destructive that world was. Her response was to drink more, use more, eat less. She was photographed at her most skeletal, her most vacant, wandering the streets of Camden at night. In early 2008, Amy was diagnosed with emphysema by her doctors. She was also found to have early-stage heart disease. She was 24 years old. The damage to her body from years of heavy smoking, drug use, malnutrition, and bulimia was already severe. She finally entered rehabilitation treatment in 2008, initially in London and then at a facility in the United States. Blake eventually pleaded guilty to his charges and was released in 2008. He and Amy divorced in 2009. The separation from Blake, painful as it was, seemed to offer a possibility of stabilization. There were genuine periods of improvement. In 2009 and 2010, Amy performed relatively well at several concerts, appeared more present, gained some weight, seemed more engaged. There were flickers of the old Amy, sharp and funny and alive. But the damage was deep and the addiction was chronic. There was no clean linear recovery. She relapsed repeatedly. Concerts were cancelled again. She appeared at a 2011 comeback tour in Belgrade, visibly intoxicated, stumbling through the set before leaving the stage. The tour was cancelled. Mitch Winehouse remained close throughout. He has been both defended and criticized for his role in Amy's addiction. Some people close to Amy believed Mitch enabled her at times, that his need to be involved and to manage her career sometimes got in the way of her getting consistent professional treatment. Others believed he was a devoted father doing his best in an impossible situation, that the criticism of him is unfair and that ultimately the responsibility for recovery rested with Amy herself, as it does with anyone battling addiction. The truth is probably somewhere between these positions. Addiction is complex. Family systems around addicts become complex. There are no simple villains in Amy's story apart from the disease itself and the industry and media culture that watched her die for profit. Her record label and the broader music industry also bear examination. Back to Black made enormous amounts of money. Amy was an extraordinarily valuable commodity. The pressure to perform, to record, to appear, was constant even when she was clearly unwell. There were people around her who loved her. But there was also a commercial apparatus that needed her to function, and those two things were not always compatible with getting her genuine sustained help. In the weeks before her death, Amy seemed to be trying again. She had been working on material for a new album. She was spending time at home, watching concerts on television, playing guitar. She was still drinking, but people around her believed it was manageable. On the night of July 22, 2011, Amy's bodyguard checked on her at around midnight. She was alive, sleeping. He checked again at 3:54 in the morning and found her unresponsive. The official cause of death was accidental alcohol poisoning. Her blood alcohol level was more than 5 times the legal drink-drive limit in the United Kingdom. She was 27 years old. She joined what is grimly called the 27 Club. Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, Jim Morrison, Kurt Cobain, Brian Jones. Artists of extraordinary talent who died at 27. The club is not a coincidence of mystical significance. It is a testament to what unmanaged mental illness, addiction, and the pressures of fame can do to a person. In the aftermath of her death, tributes poured in from around the world. Tony Bennett, who had recorded a duet with Amy just months before her death, wept publicly. The streets of Camden filled with flowers. Her father Mitch established the Amy Winehouse Foundation, a charity dedicated to supporting young people affected by addiction and related issues. The foundation does significant work and is a genuine part of her legacy. Her music remains. Back to Black continues to sell. Rehab and Valerie and Love is a losing game still play on radios worldwide. A biographical documentary simply titled Amy, released in 2015, won the Academy Award for Best Documentary Feature. It introduced her story to a new generation and gave context to people who had only ever seen the tabloid version. The documentary made many viewers furious. Not at Amy, but at everyone around her. At the cameras that never stopped following her. At the audiences that booed her at her worst moments. At the industry that kept asking for more. At the media that made her suffering into content. Amy Winehouse was not a punchline. She was not a warning about excess. She was not the sum of her worst moments. She was a young woman from North London with a voice like no one before or since. She was funny and loyal and fierce and vulnerable. She loved deeply and was hurt deeply and wrote about both with an honesty that most artists spend their entire careers trying to achieve. She was sick. She needed consistent, sustained, compassionate treatment. She needed the world to stop photographing her long enough for her to breathe. She needed the people who profited from her talent to care as much about her survival as her output. She did not get those things. Not enough. Not consistently enough. Not in time. The cameras are gone now. The tabloids moved on. The industry found someone new. And Amy Winehouse lies in Edgwarebury Cemetery in North London, 27 years old forever. That is what we did. That is what we allowed. And no Grammy, no documentary, no foundation undoes that truth. This has been Broadcast History. If you would like to tune into more content like this, don't forget to subscribe. Thank you.